My cheating wife came back from her lover and was horrified by my response. The rain tap danced against the windows of my modest suburban home, a gentle percussion that, under ordinary circumstances, would have lulled me into a state of peace. But tonight, it thrummed a chaotic rhythm, the soundtrack of my anxious heart trapped within the prison of my thoughts. I stood at the kitchen counter, the warm fragrance of simmering vegetable soup wafting through the air, a stark contrast to the cold dread that gripped my gut. I stirred the pot absently, the bright colors of carrots, corn, and peas blending into a sludgy mix that looked as lifeless as my spirit. 2 weeks ago, I would have relished this moment, laughing while Lena and I prepared dinner, reminiscing about our day, or squabbling playfully over who would chop the onions. But now the sound of the rain mirrored the storm raging inside me, a hurricane of confusion, disbelief, and raw pain. I couldn't escape the memory of that wretched night when Lena had simply walked out, leaving behind nothing but a note that felt like a dagger to my heart. I need time. The handwriting was familiar, but carried an unfamiliar weight. What kind of time did she need, I wondered, time apart to find herself, or time to embrace a new existence without me? I braced myself against the edge of the counter, a wave of nausea crashing over me as I recalled the final moments before she left, a culmination of heated words and exchanged glances, sharp and accusatory. I had tried to tell her how suffocated I felt, how the laughter we once shared was being suffocated in the stagnant air between us, but in hindsight, my pleas had fallen on deaf ears. The escalation in volume had rendered us both mute before the very silence we now inhabited. Now, every room echoed with the absence of her voice. The emptiness expanded, consuming the warmth and light our home once held. Night after night, I wandered through the lifeless expanse alone, haunted by memories I desperately clung to, the moments that now felt like distant dreams, flickering like a broken light bulb. I found myself scrolling through my phone, lost in a digital scrapbook filled with candid photos of our life together. Lena's laughter frozen in time, the crinkle at the corners of her eyes, the way her hair spiraled wildly after a day at the beach. Those images felt like ghosts now, taunting me with glimpses of joy rendered cruel by the present. It was the silence alone that made the metaphysical ache feel palpable. No more interactions over morning coffee, no silly conversations about who would take the dog for walks, no sharing of ideas about mundane household chores. Instead, my evenings devolved into highlighted worries that kept me awake long after the house engulfed itself in grateful stillness. Each tick of the clock had grown louder, amplifying my dread as my mind spiraled into dark corners searching for explanations I couldn't bear to confront. The haunting thought that perhaps all the love I cultivated in our little world had been misdirected. Then came the day where with each raindrop that splattered against the window, an unexpected sound broke the dreariness of my monotony, a hesitant knock at the door. My heart thundered as the weight of uncertainty pressed down on my chest. Could it be? Would it be her? Trepidation seized me as I wiped my hands on a dish rag and made my way to the front door, each step echoing with the conflicting wishes of both hope and despair. As I swung the door open, my breath caught in my throat. There she stood, Lena, drenched from the rain, her hair a dark halo that framed her pale face. Something in her demeanor struck me as otherworldly, a blend of expectation and trepidation, as if she had stepped from a dream into my crumbled reality. My heart raced erratically, a tumultuous surge of love intertwined with the bitter fragrance of betrayal. "Jack," she said, her voice barely escaping her lips, thick with emotion. But even as she uttered my name, I felt the air both shift and thicken, almost as if the world itself paused to witness this moment, the sacred reunion tarnished by the weight of her absence. "Why now?" I replied, trying to gauge my own emotions while fighting against the instinct to slam the door. "After 2 weeks of silence, you walk back in as if nothing happened and expect what? Forgiveness? Understanding?" Her gaze fell to the floor. Perhaps then I should have softened my tone, but rage simmered underneath too many layers of disappointment. The void she left had become a canyon carved from my gnawing grief. "I don't know what I expect," she admitted, tears glimmering in her eyes, and as I looked closely, I saw the shimmer of guilt that only pushed me further away. "But I need to talk. I want to explain." "Explain what, Lena? What could possibly make me understand?" The wind howled outside, drowning out each unsaid word as it howled through the cracks of our broken home. "You chose him. You walked out of this house, our life, without even a glance back." The wash of shame glazed over her features, a stark contrast to the all-too-familiar warmth I once cherished. My heart wavered as I battled the haunting scent of betrayal that lingered, an echo of the weeks prior, clinging to her clothes, woven tightly into the fabric of this moment. As she uttered pleas for forgiveness, her voice trembling with what seemed like remorse, all I could think was how this moment was unraveling my heart further. I felt all at once desperate for the connection we once had and yet terrified of it. Would I be strong enough to withstand the pain of what lay ahead? The raindrops, once a gentle melody, now pounded against the house relentlessly, mirroring the turmoil within. But even as my heart ached to touch her face, to feel her warmth, a realization struck. The woman before me was not the Lena I had known, but a fractured reflection, much like the remnants of our once harmonious life. In that moment, I stood at a precipice, fighting a war within my heart, knowing that the ensuing storm could either drown me or give birth to a new understanding. Jack's heart raced like a flash flood as he stood before Lena. Each beat echoed in his ears, a frantic reminder of the chaos she had woven into their lives. Her voice trembled, and the sight of her frame in the doorway, rain drenching her clothes and streaming down her face, both filled him with longing and ignited a fire of betrayal deep within him. Memories surged through him, vividly recalling the last time he'd held her close, the scent of her hair mingling with the warm embrace they shared. But this moment felt like a bitter intrusion on once idyllic recollections. "Why now?" he repeated, trying to distance himself from the flood of emotions. The echo of his own question hung in the air as a pendulum swinging back and forth, between anger and yearning. After 2 weeks of silence, you walk back in as if nothing happened and expect what? Forgiveness? Understanding? Her gaze fell to the ground, hair plastered to her cheeks, the wet strands framing her face like a curtain drawn to obscure the secrets she'd kept. A tidal wave of rage crashed against Jack's insides at the sight of her weakness. He'd wanted her back. Yes, but not like this, not when everything was still so tender and raw. "I don't know what I expect," she finally blurted out, her voice a fragile whisper, breaking under the strain of her emotions. Tears glistened in her eyes, reflecting the pain she had caused and perhaps, he dared to hope, a realization of the consequences she had yet to fully recognize. "Then why come here?" Jack's voice edged with an incredulity that he couldn't rein in. "Why march back into my life? Are you expecting me to drop everything and just welcome you back? I need to talk. I want to explain," she said, desperation clinging to her every word like the rain that soaked through her clothes. "Explain what?" Jack interjected sharply, every second of the silence festering a deeper sense of betrayal. "What could you possibly say that would make any of this all right?" The ache in his throat tightened as he struggled to contain his simmering frustration. The wind howled through the cracks in the house as if nature itself echoed his feelings of turmoil. Lena took a tentative step forward, breaking through the heavy barrier of distance. "I thought I needed to find myself, Jack. I was lost." The admission, though seemingly sincere, felt hollow. The weight of her choices pressed against him, forcing him to swallow the shards of bitterness lodged in his throat. "Lost? You chose to run away. You left our family." His heart thundered with unresolved feelings, a kaleidoscope of sadness and anger battling for supremacy. Their family, their meticulously crafted life had become nothing more than a fragile house of cards, teetering precariously on the edge of being shattered forever. The tremor in Lena's voice amplified his heartbreak. "I thought he would offer me something I wasn't brave enough to face in myself. I thought," she paused, wiping the tears that spilled from her eyes. "I thought if I left, I could uncover a stronger version of me, that it would give me clarity. But all it did was show me how much I loved you, how trapped I felt, and what I sacrificed in the process." Jack clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling away like a pot on the brink of boiling over. "But you had clarity, Lena. You left without a word. You took the easy way out." Each word dripped with anguish, driving home the cold truth of how much he had also sacrificed: connections, trust, and the stability they had curated through years together. The warmth she once radiated now simmered beneath a veil of guilt and regret, and with every fleeting moment, Jack witnessed how she mirrored the pain he bore. Anguish laced her features. She was a ghost of the woman he had loved, the woman who once filled his heart with joy and laughter. "I know I can't erase the past, Jack," she whispered, her voice breaking like the drumming rain against the window. "But I want to fight for us. I want to prove to you that I can change, that I can find my way back to the person I was when I was with you. Please let me try." Caught between the desire to hold her tightly and the need to push her away, Jack felt the swell of turmoil within him. His mind raced through the memories, the laughter, the cuddles during movie nights, the simple warmth of sharing life with her. Yet the image of her with someone else burned bright, bitter, and etching itself into his thoughts like an itch he couldn't scratch. What you want isn't that simple, Lena. Trust is not a switch to flip when it's convenient. Jack's heart pounded against his ribs as he took a step back, creating an innocent distance that felt monumental. How do I know this is real? How can you say you're not just looking for comfort? The stony silence that enveloped them bared the weight of implications. Beneath the sorrowful gaze she cast upon him and the quivering split of her lips, Jack sensed a glimmer of hope, an aching desire to rekindle the flames of what they once had, mingled with the profound uncertainty of what lay ahead. With each word, he felt the struggle surface within him. It mirrored her own battle, a deep-seated yearning for redemption amid turmoil. Jack stood at a crossroads, a delicate dance between rekindling a future steeped in healing and the instinct to protect himself from further hurt. Maybe we need to figure this out before we can take another step, he said finally, his voice tempered with the uncertainty that had become his constant companion. But right now, I need time, Lena. Time to process this impossible situation. Her expression crumbled, the vulnerability raw and open, but amidst the heartbreak he bore, Jack recognized the flicker of resilience within her eyes. It was as if they both stood on the precipice of transformation, a shared moment where unspoken promises lingered, suspended in possibility. Time, she echoed softly, her voice breaking the air between them, and he imagined her wanting to scream, yet she merely stood, trembling in the turbulence of emotion. He knew that all would not be well overnight. Rebuilding would take labor, work neither could ignore. But as the rain continued to drum the familiar pattern against the windows, Jack couldn't help but wonder if, perhaps, there existed a path that led back to both love and trust, a way to navigate through the wreckage toward an uncertain dawn. Tension crackled in the room as Lena's shoulders slumped. The weight of her choices bore heavy on her. Taking a deep breath, she seemed to grapple with her desire to make things right with the man she had hurt. But with every tick of the clock that echoed through their silence, Jack felt the suffocating layers of betrayal pressing down on him, each second replaying the haunting absence of their shared moments, those evenings filled with laughter, those gentle touches that felt like home. Now, they felt buried beneath the avalanche of pain she had unleashed with her departure. "Do you love him?" Jack demanded, the words spilling out from the well of anguish that pooled in his chest. He swallowed hard, feeling as if he might choke on the bitterness. The question hung in the air, thick and intoxicating, and for a split second he wished he hadn't asked. But the need to know was overwhelming, a siren call he couldn't ignore. Lena flinched, as though his question physically struck her. "It was never about love," she whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes glued to the cold tiles beneath her feet. "It was about running away from myself, escaping the confines I felt, my own insecurities. I thought I needed him. It was wrong to think I could find happiness outside of us." Jack struggled to process the weight of her confession, his soul in turmoil. Her words twisted in the air, wrapping around him like a suffocating shroud. "You didn't just run, Lena," he said, emotions cascading through him like surging tides. "You made a choice. You shattered the trust we built over the years." He turned away, pacing the narrow kitchen, each step a reminder of the life they had built together, 10 years now sewn into a patchwork of warmth and love, frayed and torn at the edges. The memories came flooding back, snapshots of laughter shared, whispered secrets under starlit skies. Did he really want to listen to her explanations? Did he dare allow the echoes of her past actions to wrestle with his deep-seated need for reconciliation? The answer remained elusive, lost beneath the tides of swelling doubts and existential despair. Lena's breath hitched, and she took an unsteady step forward, her hands trembling at her sides. "I need you to understand," she pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought I needed to find myself. That distance would help me gain clarity. But all it did was show me how deeply I love you, how trapped I felt in my own anxieties and expectations." "Trapped?" Jack shot back, the words sharp on his tongue. "You took the easy way out. You left us, our family. If you felt trapped, you could have talked to me, reached out. But you—" His voice faltered momentarily, the pain in his chest constricting as anger and sorrow mingled in a turbulent dance. "You chose to hide behind infidelity instead of facing the storm with me." The sound of their voices filled the kitchen, bouncing off the walls like the thunder rumbling outside. It amplified the storm brewing within Jack, leaving him simultaneously exhausted and electrified. He pressed a hand against his forehead, feeling the heat rising as he fought to refocus. "I was foolish," Lena exhaled, the weight of her admission cracking her voice. her face moist with unshed tears. The realization of her mistakes was palpable, hanging thick in the air between them. I tried to escape from my own weakness, but only found myself more lost than ever. I was searching for something I thought I could find in him. Jack watched the anguish etched into her features. It mirrored his own. Her remorse transformed her, hollowing out the bravado she wore like armor. For a moment, he felt a flicker of empathy, a deep, unresponsive ache resonating within him, entwining with his anger. But you had clarity, Lena. You could have opened up to me. You could have come to me. But I didn't, she replied, her voice small, almost fragile, crumbling beneath the weight of her regret. I was too afraid of what you would think, what you would say. Instead of confronting what felt suffocating, I took the coward's way out. The vulnerability in her tone struck a chord, sending shockwaves through Jack's heart. It didn't erase the pain, but it planted a seed of hope that perhaps they could navigate this disaster, piece by piece. Yet it felt buried beneath an avalanche of betrayal. With every glance down at her tear-streaked face, he was reminded of how she had chosen to tear their lives apart. You speak as if you've awakened to some epiphany, but that doesn't change what you did. His words ricocheted through the room, laden with hurt. It still feels like you, like us, never mattered enough to you. I need to know you're not just here to save yourself. Lena stepped closer, her hand reaching out tentatively as though she expected him to flinch. Jack, I don't want to save myself. I want to make amends. I want to fight for us, she said urgently. You say that now, but how do I know you won't just run again the moment things get difficult? Silence settled between them, the reality of their fractured trust stealing the air from the space. It was a void filled with shadows of uncertainty, whispers of betrayal echoing just beyond the walls. Both of them burned with unresolved emotion that collided like waves breaking upon rock-strewn shores. What if I can't be the person you want me to be anymore? She asked, her voice a whisper. There was a tremor in her hands, an openness that echoed through the vulnerability of her eyes. I know I've failed you, but I want to fight against that. I am scared and desperate to show you that I can change. Change is beautiful, he murmured, almost to himself. But with the words came the tug-of-war between his heart and mind. Could he really believe in her transformation? Could he muster enough strength to save them both when trust remained so splintered? He felt their shared years tread precariously on unsteady ground, and he struggled against the tide of his feelings. The tumult in his heart surged. Anger, yearning, sadness, love, so painfully complex, each emotion vying for supremacy, and yet a part of him hesitated. Lena deserved to feel pain for what she'd done, but he couldn't deny the creeping hope woven into her offers of redemption. I just need time, he stammered finally, the tightness in his chest gnawing away at the last vestiges of anger. Time for me to process all of this. You can't expect me to just accept everything you say without a fight, without wanting to understand. Her tears fell freely now, and in them, Jack saw the heavy burden she carried, the implications of her decisions blending with every ounce of regret etched in her features. You're right, you're exactly right, she agreed, her voice quivering along with the warmth of vulnerability she now wore unguarded. I'm asking for your forgiveness, but I know that can't be demanded or requested. I want to earn it back. With that truth hanging in the air like an unspoken agreement, Jack felt a fissure forming between his heart and the walls he had built around it. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he glimpsed how they might inch forward. The vulnerability of trusting someone's words, mixed with action, danced before him like a flickering candle in the darkness. Just know that I can't promise you an easy path, he said finally, softer now, as he leaned against the counter to absorb what felt like a heaviness lifting off his chest for the first time. The thought of potential healing ignited a tiny flicker, a hope resting delicately on the edge of possibility. As the rain continued its relentless drumming against the windows, paralleled by the echoes of their shared pain, Jack realized the journey of healing wouldn't be a straight line. But maybe, just maybe, they could learn to navigate the tumultuous road ahead together, building the foundation of trust one small moment at a time. Days passed since that fateful evening, and an oppressive silence filled the space between me and Lena. Each tick of the clock became a reminder of the chasm separating us, a void that pulsed with our unspoken regrets and the bitter memories of our previous arguments, now playing on a cruel repeat. It felt as if the air itself was thickening, pushing us further apart, and I often found myself wishing it would all just unravel so I could breathe again. The warmth of our shared laughter felt like a ghost haunting the corners of our home, reminding me of what we had once shared but could no longer touch. It was disheartening that the legacy of our early years together, the happy moments, the inside jokes, the whispers of love in the shadowed corners of our bedroom, had been exchanged for quiet meals filled with tension, where words were sharp and resentful, like knives waiting to strike. Lena would return late from work, her eyes darting around as if searching for a piece of herself that she feared had slipped away forever. I would watch her unpack her bag, the clinking of her keys against the counter turning into a sharp percussion of unsaid thoughts and fractured emotions, a mechanical rhythm that felt so painfully foreign. On one such evening, exhaustion gnawed at me as I stared at the half-open bottle of wine resting on the counter. My grip on it felt like a lifeline, its coolness offering fleeting solace. I could feel the storm brewing inside me, a tempest of unresolved issues and emotions desperate to escape. Suddenly, the silence shattered. "We were fine, weren't we?" I asked, the words bursting forth, raw and unfiltered. Or was it all an illusion, a facade? "You tore down our family for a fantasy." Her face faltered at my accusation, eyes widening, a mixture of shock and hurt morphing into a fleeting expression of guilt. "Jack, things changed. You stopped seeing me, the real me," she replied, her words tumbling forth finally, but they felt like bullets ricocheting in my heart. "Changed?" I scoffed, feeling the heat of anger flush my cheeks. "You cheated to feel alive again, and now you want to blame me?" I knew those words were unfair, but I felt like I was drowning, grasping for any solid ground within the tumult. "You're the one who broke this family." As the words fell between us, tears slipped down her cheeks, tracing paths of vulnerability that revealed the deepest recesses of our pain. I thought I wouldn't feel this way again, but the man I left for wasn't the answer, she confessed, and her voice quivered, revealing shades of fear that stripped her of any pretense. "I'm sorry. I was lost." Her admission hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. It triggered the floodgates of my own sorrow. Could I even understand the depth of her loss? The haunting images of her surrendering to another were seared into my mind, but Lena's words tugged at my heart in ways I was not yet prepared to confront. "I get it, Lena," I said, feeling the battle waging within me between rage and sympathy. "You were lost, and you thought you could find yourself in another person. But you had me right here, a partner who wanted to help you face your storms." Each syllable felt like an anchor to the memories we shared, the dreams we had interwoven, yet the imperfections of our realities clashed mercilessly against the ideal. "I was foolish," she replied, her vulnerability transforming her voice into something fragile, the facade crumbling as raw emotions poured out. "I tried to escape from my own weaknesses, but instead, I just got lost deeper in the shadows." I pressed my palm against my forehead and let out a shuddering breath, working through the aching turmoil that clutched my chest. Every sharp word felt like an ordeal, fracturing who I was while revealing the multifaceted layers of our life together, a life reduced to a delicate memory trapped in a glass jar. "Do you even understand the gravity of what you've done?" My voice searched for an anchor, but instead, it vibrated with disbelief. "You betrayed not only me, but our entire family. I feel like you traded the real intimacy we shared for a trembling fantasy." The intensity of my words ricocheted off the kitchen walls, but could I even bear to keep that anger alive? Seconds stretched into an eternity as Lena stood there, fragile and remorseful, a mirror reflecting back my own vulnerabilities, and I realized the depth of her regret would not absolve her of a choice that altered us. "No," she murmured, her crying intensifying as if each tear carried a fragment of the trust that shattered between us. "You're right. I ran away, and I didn't think about how it affected you or our family. I was consumed by my own need for escape." In the silence that fell afterward, I could taste the bitterness in the air. I watched her, taking in the tremor of her lips, the glisten of her tears catching the kitchen light. The sight cut deeper than any accusations hurled, for a part of me recognized her struggle. It hit me like a wave crashing to shore, the realization that her actions stemmed from her own inner turmoil, coupled with a mindset that convinced her that leaving was a form of liberation. But didn't that make her a coward? She could have communicated. She hadn't needed to disappear under a different set of arms. Every memory swirled in my mind, fighting for relevance, yet each one drove the heart of betrayal deeper into my psyche. "I can't shake off the idea that my love, the years we built, is worthless now," I said, a hint of vulnerability creeping through. "The person holding my heart saw someone else's worth more than mine. That's a truth I can't twist away from." Lena took a step forward, her hand reaching tentatively toward me, and I felt the rawness there, a desperate need for connection despite the chasm that separated us. No, she breathed, voice quaking under the weight of her apology. I didn't mean to take you for granted. I thought I could find footing elsewhere, but all I found was emptiness. The plea in her eyes held me captive. The need for forgiveness coursed through her like an urgent tide. What if I could change? She asked softly. What if I promised to fight for you, for us? This can't be the end. I need you to know that I'm working on changing. Could I trust those words? Doubt clashed within me, and as I struggled for solid ground, I felt something deep shift, a flicker of hope that dared to conjure a semblance of new beginnings between us. Nothing would ever wipe away the hurt she'd caused, but perhaps, just perhaps, this fleeting moment could serve as a stepping stone toward a future less painted by betrayal and regret. Change is beautiful, I murmured while weighing my own thoughts against her desires, understanding how tenuous our foundation remained. Would I allow myself to venture into a fragile truce where love could replace bitterness? The rain echoed against the window, slicing through the deep silence of the room, and I watched my heart flutter at the thought of what could be. Acknowledging Lena's desperation didn't erase the scars. It pressed against the shifting walls of our lives that had tilted into chaos. With courage, she was willing to strip herself bare, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't seen in too long. Just know that I can't promise you an easy path, I said, letting go of some anger as I began to process the enormity of her longing. You might find me hesitant and guarded, but I'm willing to venture into this. Those words hung between us, a fragile boundary laden with unvoiced fears, but I could see the flicker of determination spark in her eyes. Perhaps there existed a way out of this labyrinth, a chance we could still navigate through the broken shards of our past, seeking healing, growth, and understanding. As the clock continued its relentless march, a fragile foundation began to emerge between us, one made of jagged truths and fleeting hopes. Together, we were hesitant but resolute, quietly bound to explore this uncertain future, step by cautious step. Their confrontations had left us raw, yet our shared pain somehow knitted us more tightly into the very fabric of our love story, albeit one painted with shades of betrayal and regret. The evening air grew heavy as I faced Lena, each delicate word I uttered becoming a lifeline reaching out across the turbulent waters separating us. Everything feels wrong, Lena, I confessed. The weight of my words settled as the barrier between us began to crack. I missed the spark we had, the laughter, the conversations that made life worth living. But I can't pretend that I'm okay with what happened. I can't hollow out my love for you. Watching her expression shift under the force of my honesty felt like witnessing a storm. Her composure dissolved, emotions sprawling erratically. She shook her head slowly, the weight of guilt wrapping tightly around her throat, stifling and painful. I never meant to hurt you, she murmured, inching closer to me as if bridging the distance would somehow mend the scars. But I need you to know I thought running away would give me clarity, not this paralyzing ache. I want to mend this. I want to fight for us. Her sorrow bore into my heart with a bittersweet ache. I could see it reflected in the shimmer of her eyes. But was it enough? Could the canvas of our marriage be restored? Can we? I questioned, drawing the vulnerability from a place I had tried to bury. Can we redo the years of hurt and regret? My trust feels like shattered glass under my feet, Lena. Every step is painful. She stepped forward, desperation lifting her voice. I'll prove it to you, she said, her words a plea woven with determination. Let me show you how much I want this. I'll do anything. As her outstretched hand trembled, I felt the juxtaposition of her need against my trepidation. The thought of reconciling such a profound breach echoed like a phantom whisper in my mind. The reality of her betrayal had etched itself into my skin, leaving behind an indelible mark, not solely on our relationship, but on the essence of who we were as individuals. I can't just forget it, I replied, surprised by the rawness of my candidness. Every time I close my eyes, I see you with someone else. It gnaws at me like a relentless beast, and I'm terrified that it will always overshadow the moments we cherished. The silence that ensued felt deafening, like a vast emptiness had engulfed not just our home, but our lives. Lena's face fell, reflecting on her transgressions. Each tear that escaped her became a testament to her regret, cascading upwards against the horizon of our hopes. I know, she whispered, the acceptance in her voice cutting through my vehemence. But I need you to see the truth of my remorse, to understand that I never sought this pain. I barely know how hope has found a way to break in, but if you hold on, we can navigate this together. Anguish twisted in my chest, And though the potential for healing lingered just out of reach, the knot in my stomach loosened. Somewhere in the depths of despair lay a flicker of hope, corroded, yet resilient. I pictured us as two wounded souls, treading water in a sea muddled by our choices. Could we flip our tragedy into triumph? What about the promises we made? I asked, my voice trembling as I confronted the truth of our pledge. How can we build a path forward when the very foundation of our promises of us has crumbled? They're still there, Jack, she affirmed, her gaze piercing into mine with a fervent spark. We built those promises together, and while I broke them, it doesn't erase the memories we wove into each other's hearts. We just need to find our way back. The weight of her vulnerability laid bare before me, stripped of pretense, revealing the heart of the matter, held within it the cradle of possibility. It stirred something deep within me, urging me to grasp at the hesitant strands of yearning woven through our painful yet beautiful history. Together, we could navigate through the fragmented shards of trust and vulnerability, changing the texture of our shared memories. Can you promise me something, then? I hesitated, the air between us electric with uncertainty. If we pursue this, can we agree to never let something stand between us again? If either of us feels the whisper of discontent, we communicate, honestly and openly, no matter how hard it is. I promise, she replied, her sincerity a fragile lifeline. No more secrets. I want you to know every corner of my heart. I'm ready to dismantle the walls I've constructed, brick by brick. Her willingness sparkled like starlight against the encroaching shadows, illuminating a treacherous journey that still lay ahead. Despite the gnawing uncertainty in my gut, I felt drawn to leap closer into the waiting abyss. Then, Lena, I'll try. The declaration escaped my lips, a beautiful falter to match the fragility of hope coursing between us. But take my hand. It can't just be me all the time. With a breath that felt like a moment of rebirth, I reached out, my fingers brushing hers tentatively. A jolt of warmth surged through me as her palm enveloped mine, grounding me in a profound promise, one that harmonized our shared fears and our desire to reconnect. As we intertwined our fingers, I felt the room shift. For the first time in weeks, the air tasted lighter. Each breath felt less like a struggle and more like the beginning of something new, a cautious but undeniable renewal slowly bubbling beneath the surface. Thank you for being willing, she whispered, her voice soft as silk, and I could see that deep within her was a woman working fiercely to reclaim who she had lost, and a woman who was just beginning to fight for all that we could still be. Days stretched ahead like a canvas untouched, and beneath the jagged edges of our shared story, I dared to envision vibrant new strokes emerging from what remained. Each moment together became a craft, melding our losses and triumphs into a new narrative, a symphony of healing that echoed against the clamor of our recent turmoil. I couldn't predict the outcome. I didn't even know if I had the strength to traverse the emotional labyrinth that lay ahead. Yet here we stood, united by understanding and a burgeoning need to embed our tales in one another closer, navigating through the uncertainty hand in hand. Together, we would fight to rebuild, a life painted anew, vivid and free from the shadows of the past. Weeks dragged on as Lena and I sought to unravel the intricate knots of betrayal that ensnared us. Each day felt like a small eternity. In the beginning, mornings opened to the same hollow silence that haunted our home, a lingering echo of what once was. Yet as the weeks unfurled, I sensed the faintest shift, a tentative rhythm emerging from our strife, like the first blush of dawn breaking after a sleepless night. Lena had suggested therapy with a hopeful sincerity that pierced through my hesitations. I met her proposal with reluctance, having built walls around my heart, fearful of allowing anyone, even a professional, to pry open the bruises that festooned my spirit. But deep down, a hidden ember of hope flickered in the recesses of my consciousness, nudging me to consider the possibility of healing. I agreed, perhaps more for her than for myself, seeking that tantalizing spark of connection that had nearly been extinguished. As we settled into the familiar yet foreign environment of the therapist's soft, warm office, a haven filled with plush chairs and walls adorned with tranquil paintings, I noticed how tightly Lena clasped her hands together, knuckles white as if bracing against an invisible weight. My own heart thudded in my chest, anxiety surging as I struggled to find words that encapsulated months of anguish and uncertainty. This was the first real joint step toward mending the wreckage of our lives. Let's start by talking about what brought you here, our therapist, Dr. Monroe, offered gently. Her voice was soothing, almost maternal, inviting us to peel away the layers of hurt that had accumulated between us like sediment. Lena looked at me before turning her gaze downward, visibly grappling with the vulnerability of exposing her raw emotions. "I want to feel better. I want us to feel better," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "But I am terrified." I thought I could find clarity by running away, but all I found was confusion and guilt. I missed the way our lives used to feel, full of laughter and joy. I felt the prick of tears brimming behind my eyes, emotions long buried surging forth like a tide against a crumbling shore. "You left me, Lena. You broke our vows," I admitted, each word laced with the bitterness of betrayal. "I spent sleepless nights tormented by your absence." It was more than just the act itself. It was the betrayal of the life and love we had built together. "I can't comprehend how it was so easy for you to choose someone else." The room was heavy with silence as Lena's expression crumpled under the weight of my words. "I didn't. I never intended to hurt you. I thought I was seeking a different version of myself, but instead, I lost everything. And now I want to rebuild. I want to earn your forgiveness," she said, choking on her own regret. "That feels like an insurmountable task right now," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "Every corner of our home reminds me of what was lost, what you've replaced with someone else. This pain, you have no idea how deep it cuts." Dr. Monroe interjected, her tone gentle yet firm. "Jack, this process may take time. Healing is not linear. You both need to express your feelings, create a foundation of honesty. This can be a place of growth if you allow it." As she spoke, I caught a glimpse of Lena. Beneath her hurt was a glimmer of the woman I'd once loved, a woman bursting with dreams and laughter. But this woman was interwoven with the memories of deceit that still burned in my chest, leaving me in a state of unrelenting conflict. Over the next few sessions, we unraveled the threads of our fragmented love story, revealing the intricate fabric of hopes, fears, and dreams intertwined in both light and dark. Each meeting, we found the delicate balance between the past and the promise of rebuilding. Through tears and honest admissions, laughter crept back in, tentative yet persistent. I chuckled softly when Lena shared a memory of us getting lost on a hiking trip, our splashes of frustration quickly morphing into riotous laughter. The memory was a balm, a reminder that moments like those still existed beneath the surface. In time, I began to shed layers of my own hurt, revealing a vulnerable heart yearning for connection. I shared how Lena's absence betrayed not just our marriage, but my very sense of who I was as a husband and as a man. "You were my anchor, my love. When you left, I felt adrift, like I was wandering aimlessly through life, unable to find my way back," I confessed one evening. Each moment of shared vulnerability was like a tiny thread stitching our invisible wounds, and in those moments, I saw glimpses of the Lena I had fallen for, the woman who embraced life with fervor and illuminated every room she entered. She was still in there, beneath the layers of guilt and confusion, waiting for the chance to emerge anew. With every session, our therapist guided us through the shadows that loomed over our hearts. We explored the acts of love that had been neglected, the moments of connection lost in the wilderness of our pain. I found myself laughing again, the sound feeling foreign yet comforting on my tongue, while shared smiles began to replace the sharp edges of tension that had once filled our home. Evenings where silence had once loomed became alive with the gentle exchange of banter, and little by little, the wounds left by betrayal began to fade into the background. "There's something beautiful in choosing to work through this," Lena said one night, her eyes shimmering with newfound hope. "We're still here, still trying, and that means we have a chance." As we rebuilt our conversations, layered with raw honesty and mutual respect, I cautiously allowed myself to envision a path forward. Together, we began reconstructing the foundation of our relationship, a union redefined not by perfection but by resilience. During these fragile moments, with Lena leaning into me and the air thick with unspoken promises, I felt the knot of grief loosening just a little. Each therapy session became a stepping stone, drawing us closer to an ever-evolving future, one where damaged bonds could be mended through effort and love. It was exhilarating but terrifying. The thought of having to confront the past while embracing the future was daunting. In our world of shared uncertainty and vulnerability, I began to let the hope of what could be wrapped around my heart like a warm embrace. Together, we would fight to rebuild, a canvas splashed with colors that narrate not just our pain but the power of love, of healing, stepping on a path illuminated by a light we thought had dimmed forever. As I held Lena close that night, my heart echoed with a quiet determination. We would find our way back. Together, we would learn to cherish the beauty hidden in our imperfections, allowing us to create a new story woven together with threads of honesty and trust, healing the scars of our shared journey with each new breath, each new word exchanged. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. The progress we had made filled me with tentative hope, yet the shadows of doubt still lurked in the corners of my heart, refusing to dissipate entirely. One evening, as we nestled together on the couch, the flickering light from the television casting dancing shadows across the room, I could feel a familiar tightness coiling in my stomach. It was a knot of fear that had haunted me since the day Lena returned home. I turned to her, hesitating as the weight in my chest forced my throat to constrict. What if this doesn't last? I blurted out, my voice crackling with uncertainty. Lena's gaze softened, a warmth that beckoned me to voice the truth that had lain buried for too long. I felt exposed, raw, my vulnerability flickering like a candle flame in a sudden gust of wind. I understand your fear, she murmured, her voice gentle as if carefully navigating the minefield of our emotions. It's valid, but I want to do this work. I want you to trust me again, and I'm willing to fight every day for our love. Her words pressed against the walls of my heart, each syllable filled with sincerity. Yet like the wind, they often felt both refreshing and chilling. Trust is hard to rebuild, I whispered, my admission laced with bitterness. Every time the phone buzzes, my heart drops. I don't want to live in that shadow. Lena's breath hitched, and I saw the tremor in her hands as she reached for me, clutching my arm with urgent pleading. I can't change what I did, she confessed, her voice quaking. I know I can't erase the past, but I'll be open. I'll share my life with you completely. No secrets. You mean everything to me. Let's put in the time to grow. I'll never seek escape through another. Her sincerity pierced through the swirling fog of uncertainty in my mind, and I could feel the flickering ember of hope she had ignited huddling close to the edges of my heart. That night, we sat on the couch, the distance between us lessening as we embarked on an emotionally charged conversation that pulled us deeper into our relationship. I don't want to just get over this, Lena, I said, my voice low yet steady. I want to understand it. I want to understand why you felt you needed to run. Her eyes shimmered with tears, and she turned away momentarily, processing the gravity of her actions. I was drowning in insecurities, she revealed, vulnerability flooding her usually steadfast demeanor. I wanted to find myself. I was selfish, thinking I could discover who I was away from you. But all I did was open wounds that I'll carry forever. The pain in her voice struck a chord deep within me, and for a moment, I saw glimpses of the old Lena, the woman whose laughter had once echoed through the hallways of her home, vibrant and full of life. We began to speak of the small nuances of our relationship, the romance that had withered under routine, the whispers of laughter now muted by the shadows of heartbreak. Do you remember our first trip together? I said, a smile creeping into my tone despite the sadness beneath. How we got lost in the woods but ended up finding that beautiful lake? Lena chuckled, the sound lightening the heavy atmosphere. I remember how you insisted we could follow a shortcut that turned out to be a 2-hour detour. But we made the most of it, didn't we? Suddenly, images of our carefree past brought color to the pages of our shared history, teasing the edges of hope. The pain didn't vanish, but it felt lighter, suspended in the air instead of entwined around us like a vice. I watched as she tapped into that joy, her laughter echoing softly against the walls, and in that moment, I realized we both held the power to reclaim who we were. We were young and adventurous. I noted a warmth spreading through me. Before everything got complicated. Exactly, she replied, her voice steady but filled with yearning. Maybe we can reconnect those pieces. I miss the us we used to be, someone unafraid of life's messiness, someone bold and happy. We spent hours weaving through memories, exploring dreams we had tucked away like fragile treasures. It was exhilarating yet terrifying, as each revelation felt like peeling back layers of skin, exposing vulnerability in the most beautiful yet painful way. I unburdened my heart, my fears of inadequacy, my worries that our love might never recover. There are days I feel like this will never work, that we're spinning our wheels in the mud, I confessed, grappling with honesty. What if we aren't strong enough to survive this? I understand, she said, her eyes glistening with empathy. But I believe in us, Jack. If we actively work together, if we forge a path out of this darkness, then we can create a new future, layer by layer. The uncertainty still curled around us like smoke, but Lena's determination was infectious. I leaned closer, searching her eyes, wanting to believe in the possibility she saw, an unwavering faith that maybe, just maybe, love could flourish anew amidst the fractures. There are boundaries we need to set up, rituals we can reestablish, I suggested, my heart racing with a blend of hope and trepidation. We should prioritize safe spaces, moments where we can check in with each other without fear of judgment. I'd love that, Lena replied, her voice earnest. I want to rediscover those rituals with you, the small things that brought us joy. Let's create new habits, date nights, taking walks, even sharing our thoughts each day. It matters. That night morphed into an exploration of our love, a tentative yet vibrant tapestry woven with laughter and remembrance. As we committed to putting in the time and energy, promised that we might grow closer colored our reality with new shades of hope. The fear didn't vanish, lingering at the edges like a specter, but it felt manageable, dulled by the warmth of our shared intentions. We shared a quiet moment of silence, reflected in each other's gaze, and I felt a twist of emotion course through my veins, the sensation of something lifting within me, whispering that healing was indeed possible. As we leaned into one another, the walls around my heart shifted, beckoning me to trust that fate could be kinder to us. We were still a work in progress, navigating the terrain ahead with uncertainty and fear, but together, in our shared vulnerability, I could finally see the flicker of possibility glowing faintly in the distance, the light signaling the dawn of a new day, one in which we could embrace adversity and emerge stronger hand in hand. In that cozy cocoon of intimacy, I sensed the delicate threads of our lives intertwining more deeply than they ever had, creating a multitude of pathways ahead. Whatever would come, we were prepared to face it together, transforming each challenge into a lesson learned, slowly but surely forging new bonds of resilience, weaving through the darkness to grace the light. Months rolled by, and while the pain of infidelity lingered like a shadow, there arose a warmth that felt profoundly real. Lena and I were no longer simply survivors of our past. We had transformed into skilled navigators of our evolving relationship. Through careful exploration of our emotions, we worked on not just reconciliation, but a deep, resonant transformation. Each day brought fresh challenges, and we wove delicate threads of connection amidst the fraying edges of our trust. I was learning to share my vulnerabilities, a skill I hadn't cultivated before, and Lena was gradually unearthing reminders of her own, those buried parts of herself she had lost along the way. Slowly, we began to navigate our lives together with cautious openness, and I was learning to see her differently. "Dinner's almost ready," Lena called, her cheerful voice drifting through the kitchen, brightening the evening air. I paused, watching her stir the simmering sauce in the pan. The soft clang of her wooden spoon against the ceramic echoed in the calm atmosphere, a soothing counterpoint to the heartache we had both endured. In the glow of the kitchen light, she appeared ethereal, her hair catching the golden hue and dancing so effortlessly with each move she made. I felt a swell of gratitude wash over me, one that glimmered almost like the flickers of hope we had kindled together. It reminded me of the joy I had once known, and the joy I still longed for. "Lena," I called softly, breaking the comfortable rhythm of our evening. I wanted her to hear not just my words, but the whisper of my heart, a gentle plea for her to recognize the space we had created together. "Thank you for fighting for us, for showing me you're still here." She turned, her eyes sparkling with a mix of vulnerability and hope. "I believe our love can flourish again, Jack. We've faced darkness, but together we've caught glimpses of light." As our hands collided over the kitchen island, I marveled at the warmth shared between us. It felt tender, an unspoken commitment uniting us, through the good and the bad. The air between us felt alive, filled with unfiltered potential and the sweet weight of forgiveness. Yet beneath the surface of that warmth, an unsettling reminder of our struggles lingered. There was still a tightness in my chest whenever the phone buzzed. I noticed how Lena instinctively glanced toward it, as if the device were a portal to her mistakes, a bridge to her past. The nagging doubt flared up occasionally, whispering dark thoughts. Asterisk, is this real? Will she stray again? Asterisk, I brushed those feelings aside, desperate to believe that we could emerge from this stronger. We had reconceptualized our evenings, be it through cooking together, sharing a bottle of wine while reminiscing, or simply sitting on the couch and discussing our days. That night, the air felt heavy with culinary passion, rich aromas blossoming around us as I sliced through fresh vegetables, unexpectedly content in my new role. I glanced over to see Lena's brow furrowed in concentration, a stark reminder of the vivid brilliance she had in the kitchen before everything changed. "Do you remember the first dinner you made for me?" I asked, a bright smile tugging at my lips as I took myself back to that moment. Her eyes narrowed playfully as she tried to recall. Oh, I burnt that pasta. I laughed, recalling the cloud of smoke that filled our apartment and the wild dance that followed, where we both ended up laughing, half crying in front of the charred pot. You did, and yet we still ate it. Do you remember how you turned it into a pasta salad? Creative problem solving, she said, grinning as she stirred. More like sheer determination. I teased, but the laughter that spilled between us carried a deeper resonance, a reminder of the playful spirit that had once bound us together. I hadn't realized how much I had missed that simplicity until it rushed back to me in waves. With every shared moment, we slowly dismantled the fears that lurked in the corners of my heart. I understood that trust wasn't a single transaction. It was earned daily and could be woven into the fabric of our lives through sincerity and consistent choices. As I caught Lena's gaze, a warmth igniting between us, I felt a deep-seated longing slip through the cracks of my guarded heart. Lena, I said, my voice laced with emotion. What do you think our future looks like? She turned, her expression shifting to one of earnest consideration. I think it's what we make of it, Jack. We have the chance to redefine our love, not as a recreation of the past, but an evolution of who we are now. An electric current coursed through me, a blend of warmth and trepidation at the thought of what lay ahead. The ghosts of our past chased one another through the recesses of my mind, yet here we were, standing firm against the winds that sought to scatter us. Then let's move forward, together, I said, conviction steering my spirit. If we're going to embrace our love anew, we need to acknowledge what's broken and learn how to craft something beautiful from its remnants. Lena's eyes glistened as she nodded slowly. That's all I want. Healing, building, doing it together. In that moment, we reached across the expanse of the countertop, fingers intertwined gently, weaving together threads of commitment and hope. Together, we chose to bask not in the shadows of what was lost, but in the light of what we still had each other. As we resumed the rhythmic dance of preparing dinner, a comfortable silence enveloped us, wrapping us in a sense of belonging, the rhythm of our hearts echoing a slow, steady beat toward new beginnings. We were still a work in progress. The path ahead was untrodden and steep, woven with potential. But as long as I stood by her side, I realized that we possessed the power to reshape our love. This was our journey, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring capacity for redemption. Whatever challenges awaited us this time, we would face them united. Crafting joy from pain and emerging stronger than before, we stepped into the soft glow of possibility, hands held, hearts open, ready to embrace whatever the story had yet to unveil.